I like building with people over stuff that surprises and delights us. And at least from my perspective, right now, there's really no money in that for anyone. You know, you can't, you're not going to get a, I mean, you're not going to have as much of a fan base if you've got a show, if you're just being positive all the time. You gotta have tea, you gotta have toxicity, you gotta share stories, you gotta air every old grievance. And I don't really, you know what I mean? Like life is too short, dude. I turned 50, this year. So I'm kind of like doing this thing where it's like, yo, you know how we are with like our health problems. I'm like, I don't know how many more decades my black ass has on this world, so I'm trying to just like spend it, check my cholesterol, get my colonoscopy, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like trying to get a few more movies out. You know what I mean? Like I'm doing another one with Regina, and it was funny. She was like, Kemp, we're gonna make 10 movies together. I was like, Regina, man, I don't know if I'm gonna live that long, but I appreciate the energy and I'm gonna try my best.
Everybody, how you doing? Korey here again for another interview. It's the middle of the day, so you know I'm talking to somebody very special, and it's an honor to have this person back on the show. Uh, you'll know them from their work. They co-directed Across the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse, uh, did Pixar's Soul. The year it came out, this person wrote what was that year, and to an extent still is one of my favorite movies, One Night in Miami. He's done many other things, of course, and I'm sure we'll probably speak of those things as we have our discussion here. But again, it's an honor to have with us once more Mr. Kemp Powers. How are you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me back. Good to see you.
Oh, thanks for agreeing to come back. It was amazing to hear that you want to talk to me again because I enjoyed our discussion last time.
Yeah.
And you're someone that I really respect what you're doing right now. Everything that you've done, I've loved so far.
Oh, well, I'm glad to know there's at least one person who says that.
Oh, stop it. You know
No,
there's
dude, no, let's just say it's no coincidence I had to get off social media because no matter how, when you do something that makes some people happy, it makes a lot of other people unhappy. So I finally got to my nice Zen space where I just try to make my films, do my art, and hope that it connects to folks like you. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's great to hear, I'm definitely going to be talking about some of these things that you're probably hinting at right now. You know, some negativity that's out there. Of course, has been more positive. It appears in your life. As I said, you've co-directed two films, Soul, which won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature that year that it came out. Also, everybody knows Spider-Man Across the Universe, which is now nominated for another Oscar for Best Animated Feature. You know, just jumping right into it. You know, I think the last time I talked to you, it was around the time what like maybe was it during pre-pandemic?
Well, we were all, yeah. Remember that was the COVID year of the Oscars, so we were locked down. It was. I'd been at my like dining room table for for 6 months, trying to finish these movies. It was a strange time.
Well, since then, what effect has all all of this success had on your career recently?
I mean, it's interesting because like I don't want to make it seem like things don't change, but getting a movie made is hard, man. And when you have some success, it opens people up to, I think, some of your ideas. But I don't want to make it seem like it's easy. At the end of the day, it really does feel like the best analogy is like you push a boulder up a hill, and after it rolls down the other side, you go right back down the hill and start pushing another boulder up. I think that's just the nature of the beast. That being said, I think my work has connected to enough people that I've gotten more and more collaborators, more and more people who've reached out to me because people who I've been fans of who know me through my work. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
once you're getting your work out there, people have something to identify and connect with you over. So that's been really cool. There's writers and actors and directors who, I've been big fans of, and you bump into them at these events, and turns out they're a big fan of you too. You sit down, you kind of have conversations about projects you're trying to get done, and sometimes you make these connections, because really the business is really it's about the work that you do, and it's about the relationships. So yeah, I think I've gotten a lot more people kind of open to my voice, I guess is the best way to say it. But every movie is a new challenge.
So it just has been less of a challenge recently to probably get projects done or at least make those
Sure,
connections with
sure.
people.
Yeah, the usual. Less of a challenge. I get paid more. The
Yeah.
normal kind of like boiler. Let's just be real. You know what I'm
Oh
saying?
yeah.
Like it's but it still does feel like a miracle every time something comes out, and it even feels like more of a miracle when it connects, because understand these movies take years. Like Spider-Verse is a great example, man. Like by the end there, we were all kind of looking at each other and we were like, man, we hope someone likes this movie other than us. We know we loved it, but you've been exposed to it, you've watched it hundreds and hundreds of times, you've had a chance to second guess yourself, you've debated, you've focus tested for audiences, and there's things that some screening preview audiences love, there's things that they didn't love, and by the time it comes out, it just feels like a relief that is finally done, because once the movie is out into the world, it doesn't belong to me anymore. So I can kind of like just let go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, it's like it's not mine no more. It's yours, it's the people, however you react to it. I'm happy when they love it. Just cool if they don't, but it's like, all right, I did it. It's done, and moving on.
Must be a huge relief to know that there's that many people that love the film when it's done.
Yeah, man, it's tremendous, because I mean our film, I think, is so different. I thought the Into the Spider Verse was like a masterpiece. So for me, when Lord Miller asked me to come on board, one of the things that most interested me was that they weren't going to just try to repeat what was done in the first film.
Mm-hmm.
So that excited me as an artist, but it also kind of like terrifies you, because it's like, people just want more of the same. And we knew from the very beginning that we were not trying to do anything that they did in the first film. So it's not about like being better or worse. We just knew it was going to be different.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
a lot of times people aren't open to, you taking different turns and doing different things. I mean, we're human beings, man. We have bugs in our ear the whole time. I mean, I remember so many of my friends who just their kids love Into Spider-Verse so much, and they're like, man, you better not mess up Miles Morales. And I'm just like, man, relax. Like I care about the reason I'm doing this film is because I love this character so much, you know, and I care about this character. It was one of my son's favorite films. Like my own kids are excited to kind of like see stuff behind the scenes as I'm working. I show them little scenes and kind of get their reactions. And I say my kids are adults now, so but it's still like one of those things where I like kind of making cool stuff. I'm like making the kind of stuff that I want to see. That's the best way to describe it. I like making movies that I want to see.
You know, since we're on the subject here of people, not all, being the harshest critics and not saying the nicest things. And you're talking about people who probably even come out and say some racist things. But I want to ask you this question
Sure.
while it's on my mind. And I don't
Hmm.
know if you've even heard of this. I don't think it was a huge controversy, but it was something that was brought up by somebody, and it did have some traction for a day or two.
Okay.
So it's one thing to get some blowback from people who, like we said, are racist or whatnot. But then I remember that there was something said by, I think it's Dr. Umar Johnson. You, you, anyway, so you probably haven't heard about this, but it was a whole video about, man, they putting this black boy with this snow bunny up here. How come they ain't putting him with? They can't put him with no black girl. It was something that just happened for about a day or two. We did a video about it.
Okay.
It got kind of popular. So I don't know if you had heard about that or not.
No, I hadn't. I mean, that's funny. I mean, I guess nothing would surprise me anymore. I don't really care. You know what I mean? Like, again, we were there's a story arc we're trying to tell And Miles and Gwen's friendship, maybe there will be, maybe they won't be relationship was the foundation of the first film, and it's complicated, that there's obviously we introduce a character Spider Punk, who's another boy. We introduce another character Spider Bite, who is a black girl who the second Miles meets her kind of does one of those like double takes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because teenagers they're teenagers, man. Like teenagers are into one another, all different. They're not gonna, at least what I've seen, they don't seem to define themselves necessarily by, the structure like society putting on them of who they are or aren't supposed to be with. I mean, I'm speaking again, I hadn't heard this, but again, I'm a guy, I'm not really on social media anymore. I haven't been for a minute. And hearing stuff like that is like a great reminder of why like I made the right choice to just get off of it, because I mean I'm just trying to tell a story that people can like enjoy. But I learned a long time ago, man, that people are going to be mad about something all the time, and that's totally okay. It's been one of the more interesting things that's happened is while we were promoting Spider-Verse, so many people have come up to me and told me afterwards how much they love Soul and how positive, like the positive impact of Soul was on them.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when I think back to Soul and remember it, I was still on social media, and I remember just like waves of negativity. Like, why is a black man got to be a soul? You know what I mean? Like, why can't he just? I mean, there was so much. I had black people calling it racist, and I had white people calling it woke trash. And but fortunately, a lot of people got the story that I was trying to tell and the message that me and Pete and Mike Jones and everyone at Pixar were trying to tell, and that won out. So I think like time is going to be the ultimate like determination of how effective your film is. People, and again, people have the right to whatever feelings they have, but we live in a time right now where I've people ascribe intent to everything that we do, and in a lot of cases that intent is not there, where we're just a bunch of artists, writers, directors trying to make a good movie. But everything is insidious these days.
Yes, it's crazy how you just can't win sometimes, with people.
And
So
you can't try. You cannot, like, don't even try, man. Like it's if you try, you're chasing after something. It's like, what is the story you're trying to tell? That's it. It's as simple as that. Like this is something that means a lot to me. I have a point of view. I'm allowed to have a point of view. You have a point of view too. You want to go out and try to get your point of view out in the movie, that's your right. So all I'm trying to do is like express my point of view in the work that I put out
What
into
would
the world.
you
And
oh, sorry, I don't know what that was. Sorry.
okay.
Um, you know, we're talking about your success and how far you've come in with your career, and there is power in money and there is power in success, but I don't know if you would agree with me on this or not, but it seems like the real power is in ownership and distribution. Or is it not? Or am I reading
Well,
too much?
explain. I mean, I want to make sure I understand it. Explain what you mean when you say that, like an ownership and distribution.
Well, I guess I'm looking at it as just like with any kind of businesses. How many are owned by marginalized groups or minority groups or
Right.
anything? I kind of define it by that. Like how many banks
Mm.
are owned by black people.
Sure, sure.
So I'm thinking about in the same way in terms of Hollywood or entertainment. How many studios are owned by marginalized groups or minority groups
Mm.
or whatnot. And because I was going to ask you, do you see that happening more, or do you see a future of that happening more for minority groups in entertainment? Owning studios, owning distribution.
Well, I think that there's things have changed. Look, obviously we have a long ways to go, but I'm really encouraged by the spirit of independence and entrepreneurship that I see in particular among creatives of color. It's one of those things where again, I was a journalist for almost 20 years before I even got into this business. But even in my early days in the business, it felt like some of the decisions that I was trying to make with my career, people didn't think they were a good idea because it felt like the overwhelming thing, especially if you were a black creative, was about like kind of getting a job. You know what I mean? Getting a job, getting an office at a studio. And there is this independent streak that I think has really permeated the business. And it's really encouraging to see creatives of color try to take advantage of that. Because look, going the independent route, man, it brings its own challenges. That means movies are going to be smaller, the budgets are going to be smaller, and conversely, if you do anything that costs more than $100 million to make, and that would be both Spider Verse and Soul, look, you have certain responsibilities, but something that costs that much will impact the stock of the company making it if it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do well. Therefore, you have a crew to manage, you have people, but you're as much kind of having to manage the expectations of those up above you. So for me personally, what I like to do is I don't want to say one for me, one for them, because they're kind of all for me, but I don't mind kind of floating between not just the scale of the projects, but the mediums. Because when I do a smaller scale thing, I have a lot more, not just control, but it just, you know what I mean? It's almost like you're kind of like off the grid a little bit. People don't care as much when like, Regina King and me are doing a little movie like One Night in Miami. You know what I mean? It's like if that was a film that was completely independently financed. And we actually just made the movie. The producers at Snoop, Keith and Jess Calder and Jody Klein, they wrote the checks, they made the movie, and then we basically sold a completed movie to, we had a bunch of bidders and we ended up selling it to Amazon. But like when we were making that film, we weren't on the radar. No one knew that the film was in production because it was a completely independent proposition. There's challenges when it's independent, but there's also kind of excitement and a feeling of ownership. When
Yeah.
you're dealing with a lot of this big IP stuff, it's in the name. It's intellectual property. It's someone else's property. You could have a very personal idea, but at the end of the day, Spider-Man, Superman, the X-Men, these things are owned by other people. So, that's just how it is. You have the right to create your own original things, but it's really hard to build something original that is going to be as beloved as something that has 50, 60, 70, 80 years of history and behind it. Miles is so fascinating because he's a relatively new character who just like really stuck right away. And that was again, that was one of the things that I thought was really cool. There were those kind of classic black Marvel characters like the Falcon and stuff like that I like. But in my big character in the '90s was Bishop of the X-Men. I'm sure you remember
Oh
that. But
yeah.
like when Bishop came out, that was like, oh snap, this dude's actually kind of dope. You know what I mean? And for a long time, I was like, oh man, I hope they do like a Bishop movie. And then I think he appeared in one of the X Men movies, but it was similar, kind of like with Miles, where I was like, oh wow, this is a cool, interesting character. Because he didn't have the history, but he stuck so well, you kind of roll. But it's like we don't own that, man, and
Yeah.
like we that's a big corporation that Spider-Man and all his permutations is very valuable. So for certain, we're kind of like a steward, but that doesn't mean we can't turn it into something very personal. But I mean I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it's a weird time in Hollywood, man. I'm really committed to making movies that get and theatrical is in a really challenging place right now, and I can speak for myself and that I've talked to a lot of really talented directors, other filmmakers who who are just kind of like they don't know how they're going to get their work made but and during this kind of like feast or famine time. I think no one has any answers, and the next couple of years are going to be fascinating. I have no idea what's to come, but I do think people of color, artists of color, have been really committed to kind of building their own things in film and in television. and you see that. I mean, I don't have to name names. You know who a lot of these people are, and I think that's really encouraging.
You know, you bring up something interesting when you talk about how theatrical is kind of a different thing today. Theatrical distribution. I was talking about this with somebody the other day about how it seemed like it's kind of changing, evolving. I don't know if for better for worse or whatever, but we were talking about how shows look like movies now, where back in the day, that was a clear distinction. You watch TV.
Mm,
TV didn't have the budget that a movie does. You want to see that budget, you have to go to the big screen. Seems like all that is
right.
kind of changing right now. For someone who's making movies like you do,
Hmm.
um, what's your outlook on that? I mean, is it something that you look positively towards? Is it something that's a challenge? Is it something that worries you?
I mean, I'm not trying to sound arrogant. I'm not worried in that like I really have a strong confidence in like what I do and this like if I even like share an idea with someone else, something that I'm excited about, trust me, like I believe that like, oh my God, this thing is gonna be like so dope. So, I'm a little I gotta get to like a delusional place about my ideas before I even share them with another human being. Um, but I mean, streaming has upended the entire industry and a lot of it has been positive. Let's be real, man. Like for that period of time when streamers came out and they were making so many shows and so many movies, it actually opened the door to a lot of voices that might not have even gotten an opportunity. You know what I mean? It was that period of like content craze. Like I hate the term content because I don't look at what I do as content, but I'm talking about like you remember this time where it was like, oh my God, we need something to put on all these services. And ultimately, we started seeing the negative impact of that, where it was like people kind of got trained, I think, to not go to the movie theaters, especially for certain kinds of films that, you know, they were kind of like a big part of the movie going experience. I'm sure you've heard like, adult dramas being a great example. And so things look bleak. But then all of a sudden, Oppenheimer comes out, right? And it's like an adult drama with like a bunch of people. And I love Oppenheimer. And it's like, and it makes almost like $1 billion. So, I do believe that part of the reason I'm not as afraid is because I feel like passionate artists are going to make great stuff, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
And when passionate artists make great stuff, it's going to connect to people. There was a period of time where it didn't even have to be great. It was like very much brands and IP, and like we give you this candy and you're just going to take whatever we feed you. And then I think audiences became understandably so more discerning. They're not just going to go because it's out. If you build it, they might not come because they think it's whack. But that being said, if someone does something interesting and people are talking about it, I'll give you a great example of a movie this year that like wasn't on my radar, and I was like, okay, two people who don't, when they don't share their opinions about movies a lot, and when they did, I was like, all right, I got to check this out, and that was Godzilla Minus One. Okay, one of my boys who like I really respect his opinion. He's like, I went to see this movie in the movie theaters, man. You got to go see this, like, dope. Like, and I was like, all right, cool. Like, he never says that, So I was like, all right, I'll get around to it. Then the other one was my son, who was like, Dad, I saw this movie Godzilla Minus One twice in theaters. He said it's my favorite movie of the year. Now understand, my movie came out this year, so my own kid was like, Dad, I just saw my favorite movie of the year, and I was like, I thought Spider-Verse was your, and it was like Godzilla Minus One, and he didn't even like correct himself as my own child. And I was like, oh, damn. Like, even my daughter had the good sense to be like, Dad, and that's another movie. She was like, Dad, you got to see Suzume. That's my favorite animated film other than yours. And like, my son didn't even correct himself. And then, you know what? I saw the movie and I was blown away because it's not about the monster, Godzilla Minus One, it starts with this kamikaze pilot who feels shame because he couldn't go through with killing himself. It's about the characters and the people. And it's really incredible emotional storytelling. So that even if you're not into monster movies, right? You're not into Godzilla, you're not into any of those things, you just watch it and you're like, that's a really good movie. You see what I'm saying? And like, that's a film that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So, artists, I think talented, passionate artists are always going to make dope stuff that surprises the hell out of people, that goes against whatever the prevalent belief, philosophy about what's in, what's out. Like there's that artists are going to make great stuff. And when they do, it's going to connect to people.
No, great point. Great point. Which you are making great stuff, by the way. So I can see.
Thank you. I appreciate
I can
that.
see why you say I have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
I want to kind of shift things here a little bit. Actually, before I ask this question, I'm very curious. So, how does a journalist kind of parlay into writing and directing in Hollywood?
It actually was really, it's funny because I'm not, there's a lot of, there's another writer director who I know a bit, Cord Jefferson. He was a journalist. There's a lot of journalists who kind of made a transition. I think one of the key things is I was a good reporter, and that skill translated really well to my writing. Reporting became research. And that's an element of the creative process that I think a lot of writers don't necessarily enjoy, because it's kind of like drudgery, digging into stuff and doing research. You just want to kind of get to the script and write your fun dialogue, you know what I mean, and like do
Mm-hmm.
all those things. But being a former reporter, I spend a lot more time on research, I noticed, than a lot of my peers, because I actually enjoyed it. So it didn't matter the genre. I could be writing a science fiction movie and I'd want to like talk to scientists about, the science behind this thing that basically was becoming, magic. That kind of element. I would love to travel. I'd love to, if something was set in a certain real place, I'd love to kind of visit the place, and I think these were all kind of vestigial elements of my journalism background that really translated well to my, I guess, both writing and like pre-production as a filmmaker. And it's like an attention to detail, an attention to like accuracy of a certain type of character. Early on when you're, oh, your dog is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, somebody's at the door. Hold on. Let
That's
me.
all right.
You hold on.
Want to pause it?
Hold on. Let me put this dog back. I'm sure some.
Yeah.
Hey.
No, no, don't worry about it.
Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Go in the room. Go in the room right there. Yeah, I do this from the house. I'm sure some salesman or something that came by.
It's all good.
Sorry to
No.
really have you so rudely interrupted, but go ahead.
It's all good, dude. It's all good. But like I just think that translated over really, really well for me. And especially since the writing was kind of bad in the beginning, but like as I'm working through, because I think there's a lot of like early writer mistakes you make. Like you're writing something and it's interesting. I'm actually going to I've never taught before, but I'm going to be teaching a class later this year at a university, just one class. I'm going to be a visiting professor, do a screenwriting class. And there's, in like looking at new writer scripts, there's this thing where like you see all these characters, and after you've met the person, they are all speaking in that person's voice. You see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah.
every character sounds like me, and I think I'm clever. I think I'm funny. So everyone's kind of same quips. They're all versions of the same person. I think because I was a journalist and I'd interviewed thousands and thousands of different kinds of people, if I was writing a character that was a stockbroker or a character that was a sanitation worker, I've spoken to enough of all of both of those groups that I don't know. I would just kind of like make sure that that was like a fully formed character who had a background. I'd write a lot of bios, and a lot of the information in the bios never showed up in the script. It was more to just inform me about the character and what they would do in the situations that I was putting them into. And again, I'm not the only screenwriter who's done that, but I was really informed a lot, I think, by my journalism background.
Nice, nice. I know exactly what you mean. You know, because you are people don't realize even with journalism, you're still putting a story together. You know,
Absolutely. Totally.
yeah,
it's, it's just one, you have the burden of, the responsibility of trying to be accurate and truthful. And the other one, you don't.
yeah.
I mean, don't forget, that was one night in Miami. I was researching the friendship between those four guys with the intention of writing a book about it. This is when I was still a journalist.
Yeah.
That book never came to fruition because there were blanks I couldn't fill in. So then when I found myself making a transition into writing creatively, the very thing that stopped me from writing a book, which was not knowing, became the fictional element that was the foundation of this work of fiction that I did that was still powered a lot by facts that I from my own years of research on these four men.
So I'm sure that maybe not because you don't seem to be too involved with social media, wisely so. But I'm sure you had to have heard of the Cat Williams interview.
Oh man, I mean, who hasn't?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
like I'm still breathing, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm still black. Of course, I heard about that. Like that memo went out.
Oh, of course, it
I
couldn't
got
be
friends
avoided.
who are like, "Yo, yeah."
So the reason why I bring this up, I'm not going into the interview itself, but I thought there was something relevant to talk about here with that, because there's been, of course, a lot of responses and a lot of follow-ups to
Mm,
that interview right there,
mm,
and I think it's starting to bring the question for a lot of people of all backgrounds that saw this and some of the things that happened afterwards. Do black people support each other enough, especially in the field of entertainment? And
mm.
you being very successful, but also you working directly within this business. Um, I thought it'd be kind of cool to ask you how you felt about that.
Well, I think it's a complex. I really don't want to generalize, man, because like my friends support me, my associates support me, and a lot of those people are black, you know, but a lot of those people are also white and Asian and Latino. You know what I mean? Like Regina
Yeah.
King supports me. My boy James Samuel, director who did The Harder They Fall and Book of Clarence, supports me. My boy Reynaldo Marcus Green, who did, King Richard in the upcoming Bob Marley movie. So from my perspective, yeah, black people support each other in the business because I'm surrounded by the Lucas brothers, my dudes, the Lucas brothers, Shaka King, David Oyelowo. These are all people who support me big time. They're people I can reach out to, call, I kick it with, we share stories. And so I exist in a world that's like a lot of black artists who have been friends and collaborators and mentors. They support me pretty heavily, but I can't then generalize because it's like, wait, what is the responsibility of a black artist to support, someone else who's in your business who's black if they're being shady? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
let's be real. Like, my group of associates that I collaborate with, we support each other. But I guess it's what I'm saying. It's like
Hmm.
what kind of generalization is that? Where it's like, okay, if anyone who happens to be black does anything, I gotta just like support them and like look. At the end of the day, for the most part in this business, I spend most of my time minding my damn business and paying my taxes. So that's pretty much how I spend most of my time. I'm not the guy. You don't see me at a lot of parties in Hollywood unless it's literally thrown by like a friend who says like I want you there. So but again, it's a for me at least, I think black people are incredibly supportive of one another in the business because the black people that I associate with, we support one another. But I also know a lot of black people in the business who don't feel supported by, other people like themselves. And I think that I'm sure that's, legitimate as far as where they come from. I mean, Cat Williams thing is interesting. Like I don't know the world of stand-up comedy at all. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? But I have a few friends who are stand-up comedians, and like that, I mean, that's a different business, man. That's like mad competitive. A lot of people mad at each other and don't like each other. But look, man, I'm just trying to like go to the Comedy Cellar and like You know what I'm saying? Like see a comedian I dig. And again, I have a few comedians that that I'm pretty tight with, but I don't go into their world and tell them how to do their stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and they don't come into mine and tell me how to do mine. So sorry, I hope that's not a non-answer, but I'm just being real. Like for me, I have a lot of black artists who are around me who really, really support me, you know?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so
Well, you saying that's not a non-answer. Actually, I didn't want to. I asked that question in a broad sort of sense because I didn't want to skew that question one way or another. Now, my
mhm.
hopes were that you're going to answer positively, which you did, because I think
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of people look at this and they want to see mess. Or they, people love gossip. People love
Oh, I
mess.
mean, it's a big gossip is a big business right now. And that I think that's another part of the reason why I kind of stepped away because you have to understand like what excites me the most, man, is talking to people about stuff that I like.
Hmm.
And right now, no one wants to talk about what they like. They just want to talk about what they hate.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
I you have to understand I'm a little biased because love it or hate it, I know a lot of these people, even if they're not close friends. This is a very small community. I mean, the filmmaking community, the television community, and the theater community, of which I'm a part of all three. It's a really small community. So, people's vitriol, in many cases, I know the person who was doing the thing, and whether I like it or don't like it, I know how hard they worked on it. You know what I mean? I know the intentions behind it and what they were trying to do. And I just like to get excited about stuff that it's like you saw how excited I was when I brought up Godzilla Minus One
Yeah.
because it surprised and fucking delighted me. And I love that feeling. That's the feeling that gets me to go to a movie theater. And so I just I like building with people over stuff that surprises and delights us. And at least from my perspective, right now, there's really no money in that for anyone. You can't, you're not going to get I mean, you're not going to have as much of a fan base if you've got a show, if you're just being positive all the time. You gotta have tea, you gotta have toxicity, you gotta share stories, you gotta air every old grievance. And I don't really, you know what I mean? Like life is too short, dude. I turned 50, this year. So I'm kind of like doing this thing where it's like, yo, you know how we are with like our health problems. I'm like, I don't know how many more decades my black ass has on this world, so I'm trying to just like spend it, check my cholesterol, get my colonoscopy, you know what I mean? Just
Yeah.
like trying to get a few more movies out, you know what I mean? Like I'm doing another one with Regina, and it was funny. She was like, Kemp, we're gonna make 10 movies together. I was like, Regina, man, I don't know if I'm gonna live that long, but I appreciate the energy and I'm gonna try my best to
Yeah.
to kind of like because I love working with you, like I just just like I love these people,
Yeah.
and even we all slip up. We all do stuff that people that retro. We look back on. It's like, oh man, I wish that would have been better. And and we're gonna all hear it enough from the public. I just don't want to be an additional voice piling on to anybody.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I'm not critical. I'll have a great critical, discussion about art. But there's a difference between having an interesting critical discussion and just flaming everybody.
Yeah. I'll come back to something you said. You were talking about Bishop from the X-Men.
Mm.
Did you ever try to get a movie done about Bishop?
I've never made the attempt. No, no. But I would love if someone who had an interesting take like gave that character his due. I mean, I was really fascinated. Of course, that was a time when Cable and all those characters were first introduced. In this idea of like the future where the mutants had like a police force. I thought that was really
Mm-hmm.
cool and interesting. But ultimately, it's like it's about the artist who's trying to tell the story. I don't have any Bishop related things that I'm interested in. Again, I got my own like long list of things that I'm trying to do. As a writer, as a director, as a writer director, as a player. Like I've got plenty of things that I'm chasing down that I'm pretty passionate about. but if someone talented and passionate does it, and it's good, man, I'll be the first one in line to catch that.
Here's a couple of positive things before we go. Uh,
Sure.
I can't tell you how. This is why it's such an honor to talk to you, because I love Miles Morales so much, because just of the representation that character has for somebody like me, that something I still feel like a kid who wishes I had this kind of character to connect to, and since I've been waiting for it all my life, I'm that kid again who finally has it. I know a lot of things have been said about Miles Morales being half black and half Puerto Rican. I'm sure you've heard a lot of racist things
Sure.
about this character, but despite that, the character still remains hugely popular and has been accepted, by everyone overall. The people who don't like Miles Morales are a small minority. That just thrills me to no end to see that. You having worked so closely with this character, what is it that you think that has such this huge and wide appeal of Miles Morales?
Well, I think like he's relatable. I think the journey that he's gone on, at least in our film and the film that precedes it, is a really relatable journey, and there's a universality in his experience. I'd say that universality kind of trumps the all those things. Whether you're Latino, Black, I just think he's a fascinating, interesting character, and I think we've done a pretty damn good job of telling an exciting, interesting story. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some people who probably hate who Miles Morales is in a philosophical way that still enjoyed the movie, and that's a normal human thing too. One of my favorite TV shows of all time was The Sopranos. Almost every character on that show was racist, like I mean, but I'll be damned if Tony Soprano wasn't one of the most compelling, interesting characters, on in television history. And so you see what I'm saying?
Of
Like
course.
it's a great character, and I think has a very interesting story, and you relate to it both intellectually and more importantly emotionally. And it's like he's like a Spider-Man in general. The character on the base level is an everyman. Batman's
Mm-hmm.
a billionaire, Superman is an alien, and Spider-Man is a character that's like from a neighborhood who's going through the struggles that I'd like to think that like most people who aren't rich or from another planet can understand.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's just that in a really simple level. And in the case of these films, the producers, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, they're talented guys, and they're committed to bringing in talented people who just care about the character. And it's like you hear some people in this business say like, don't take anything personally. But when it comes to our art, I think one of the things that the first and the second film, the teams behind it have in common is that we all take these characters and these stories really personally.
Mm-hmm.
It all feels kind of personal. You know what I'm saying?
Of
Like
course.
you really take it. You're like, I mean, everything I do is personal to me. So, and that doesn't mean it's always going to succeed. But that means when it fails, it hurts 10 times more. You're 10 times more vulnerable. But I don't really know any other way to operate because I do my best work when it's personal.
Yeah. Uh, so this is something I've been very curious about with you, and correct me if I have this wrong, because I mean you've directed two films, feature-length films.
Yes.
Yeah. So we just talked about those. Those films being Soul for Pixar, and of
Yeah,
course
co-directed, and
Spider-Man
yes, one
Across
of
the
the yes,
Spider-Verse.
exactly.
But those were co-directed by other people.
Yeah, I mean, Spider Verse is different. Spider Verse had three directors. I was co-director on Soul.
Yeah.
Pete Doctor was the main director, and I was the co-director. That's a bit. There's a. It seems like semantics, but there are like distinctions.
It's a big difference there. So co-directing, you do it one other person, and you're directing Into the Spider Verse, or Across the Spider Verse was
Yes.
directed with you and two other people.
Yes, Joaquin Dos Santos and Justin K. Thompson.
So now that you've done directing with the team, or with a partner, any chance of doing a solo directed project?
That's the plan. I mean, I can't say what it is yet, but like I already know. I mean, the next thing that it'll probably, I have like live, I go back and forth. I love live action as well. So I have a live action project that I really, really hope I have an opportunity to direct that I plan to write as well. And but yeah, I mean, sometimes I want to. Sometimes it's cool to work with collaborators. Sometimes I kind of have the full vision in my head, want to do it myself. But absolutely, absolutely. I mean, directing is a big part of who I am. But I also don't mind writing for some people. Like sometimes you don't want to have the burden of like having to take it to its end point. Sometimes you just like you want to come up with that version that's on the page and then see what a talented collaborator or director does with it
Hmm.
with that version. And other times you have the whole thing. You know exactly how you want to see it up on the screen. And I have that for some things that, it's it's ultimately not up to me. All I can do is kind of like I'm pushing the boulder back up the hill again.
Got you. Got you. No, fully understand that, man. Uh, Final thing, and you get this
Yeah.
question asked a lot, I'm sure. I'm going to be that next annoying person to ask you. Beyond the Spider Verse, status on that right now.
The only thing I can say about that film is that it will come out. That's all I can say. I don't. It will come out. I really you got to talk to Phil Lord and Chris Miller and some other people about that. But I know people are so desperate to hear anything, but all they should know is that a lot of talented people are working really hard on it.
Good to know. So we will have it. No worry about that.
Oh yeah, that's no question.
Anybody you'd like to work with down the line, being that your career is expanding right now, you're going to be doing
Yeah,
solo directing
honestly, a
projects.
lot of the people I want to work with, I'm kind of working with them already on the down low. So it's kind of like I can't, there's actors I've been big fans of who, because of the past few years, I've gotten to really kind of sit down and build with and try to come up for look for projects. And when most of what we do, we have to kind of like do almost like in secret
Hmm.
until it's time for people to know. But honestly, right now I feel great because almost everyone that I have a chance to connect with, they I've been hitting it off with a lot of people, and a lot of people, it feels simpatico, like the types of films that I want to make are the types of films that they want to do, and it's about trying to find the right thing because you can't force it. But I'm just like anyone else. I'm a fan of film, I'm a fan of television, and I'm a fan of theater. So anyone who does good things in those mediums, I'm probably a fan of them.
Nice, very nice. Well, thank you for the great discussion and telling us
Of
what you
course,
can. But this as it's, like last time, this has been such a nice conversation. It's been great to hear your opinions on so many things. And again, it's an honor. I
oh
love
man.
this movie, and I should I'm just the next person in line. I'm just the next chump who's been telling you this, but
No,
absolutely
no, dude.
love
That
this
means
movie.
I wish you understood how it's good it is to hear that someone really loves it because people think that with the people who make these things, all we're hearing is positivity, and that's not true. We hear we get notes, like
Yeah.
it's like you get notes for something that you already did. From you're just like, wow, okay, I'm sorry, it wasn't perfect for you. So it's really good to hear that you enjoyed it. That means a lot. I appreciate that.
Well, I've enjoyed everything you've done. You've had a perfect track record for me. Everything, almost everything you've done has been on my list of best of or favorites. So, again, you don't understand how much of an honor it is to talk to you. And thank you for coming back and talking to us again. I hope we can have another conversation one day.
Yeah, hopefully I'll have put something else out good that makes it worth your time.
Well, I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be very much so. And I'm looking forward to it. Again, everyone, Kemp Powers coming in to talk to us. If you don't know, we mentioned it over and over again, but director has given us great things. Soul, Spider-Man Across the Universe, one of my favorite movies, One Night in Miami. It has been truly, truly a blessing to talk to you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Anytime.
All
All
right.
right, be
Bye
safe.
bye. And there we go, people. Another one right there. Are you still here?
All
We're gonna
right.
get him out of here. Hey,
Yeah.
thank you. Talk to you later, man.
My,
Bye bye.
my pleasure, man. Be safe.
See ya. And there we go. Another great conversation. So nervous when I go into these things, so it just it makes me giddy when I'm done with this to know that the the conversation and the interview went well. Or at least I hope it went well. I don't know. He might be talking trash about me right now. I don't think so, though. But I really do appreciate him and anyone that comes over here to take their time to talk to me. But mostly, I appreciate you out there for coming in and supporting what we do by watching these things. Wouldn't be able to do it without you. So until the next one, and there will be a next one, whichever that is, whatever that is, whether it's an interview or just another show. I'll see you on that next one. Until then, though, just remember, as always, kcoolmans. Oh, let me turn that up. There we go. kcoolmans@gmail.com. That's KCOOLMANZ @gmail.com. Email us with any kind of questions, comments, compliments, insults, input, and/or advice. Check us out on our social medias: Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, Patreon. And you know what? If you do like these interviews, we do have them on a channel on YouTube called Double Toasted Interviews. Very straightforward. Check them out. I might be playing this over again on, streaming it again on Twitch or whatnot. You'll see it somewhere. You'll hear me talking about it. I'll guide you over to it. Hey, listen, if you find yourself here in Austin, Texas, do me a favor. Come hang with us. But first, please let us know by emailing me, kcoolmans@gmail.com. See, the reason I want you to do that is because, we're busy, as you might have guessed, but don't want to be too busy for you. Want to give you all the quality time you deserve. And so we don't want you to catch us off guard. We want to be able to clear our schedules. Email us, kcoolmans@gmail.com, and let us know what your plans are for Austin. Moving here, just passing through. Let us know. We'll hang out with you. All right, everybody, that is it. Thank you again so much. Until next time, good night, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Whenever you are listening to or whenever you are watching this, goodbye and stay toasty.